topic with a story. So what I'm going to talk about, and this exercise that we're going to work on, is knowledge and its limits. And the story is that since I was a kid, I was obsessed with knowing. Like all of us are in some ways. But that was turning out to be a problem for my parents, so they had to like appease my curiosity with books and answering questions and so on and so forth. But one question that I think, as far back as I remember, is what is real? What is reality? And that's a very abstract question. I just haven't stopped asking that question ever since childhood. That led me to a path of pursuing a career in science, and that made me into a philosopher and a failed scientist in some ways. I acquired a deep interest in the arts because science seemed to hit a wall when it comes to answering such philosophical questions, at least if you're trying to make a career out of it. And it was only like about maybe 6 or 7 years ago that I shifted from looking at the world through the lens of science to looking at it through the world of art. And I don't know anything yet regarding the questions that I have been pursuing, but it did bring up some interesting insights that I thought would be relevant to share with this audience in the form of an exercise. So I'm hoping that everyone has a blank piece of paper with them and hopefully a pen. Okay, so what we're going to do is, we're going to do something very simple with a pen and papers. So if you don't have a pen, maybe Angela could put you up the point. So the blank paper you have in your hand, let's consider that as infinity. Okay, imagine this paper goes all the way to infinity. So the white blank space, that's infinity. Now on that space, in the center, approximately, you could draw a really tiny circle. Make it really tiny, maybe a centimeter or half a centimeter in diameter. Okay, so I want you all to now think of this question I'm going to pose. If we were to quantify all the knowledge you have in your mind right now, if it was possible, how would it look? Just put that in that small little container as an abstract content. Okay, so everything you know in your life right now, everything you know about what is real, what is reality, what is not, just the ultimate knowledge that you have in your mind, let's contain that in that small little circle. Okay. Now, around that circle, draw a slightly larger circle, maybe the size of a loonie, probably. And that circle is the amount of knowledge that you can possibly acquire in your lifetime. We all have finite life, so the amount of knowledge that we can acquire in our lifetime is that slightly larger circle. Now, maybe draw a much bigger circle around that. Not the entire page, but maybe 3 or 4 times bigger than the loonie. That circle represents all the knowledge that human beings have acquired so far throughout history since the millions of years of evolution. So that's that larger circle that we have right now. Now draw a slightly larger circle around that. And that represents all the knowledge that is encoded in all the life forms that exist on the planet. Because there is knowledge encoded in everything. Emmanuel was talking about different types of intelligences. So, most of these creatures have been around on this planet way longer than human beings have. So, that's a significant amount of knowledge that is there in that outer circle. And just for the sake of the science fiction aficionados, let's draw one more circle slightly outside that. And that represents any other extraterrestrial intelligence that may be out there and their knowledge base about what is reality. I think that should be sufficient for now. Now the point is, what remains on this paper outside that largest circle and goes on forever. That is the limit of knowledge. That is the unknown. All of these circles can keep expanding as time goes by. But as Einstein said, the sphere of our knowledge expands, but proportionally, the sphere of our ignorance keeps expanding even more. There's this quote by Socrates that really made a strong impression on my mind as I kept on reading and asking questions and knowing about various fields of scientific inquiry and now trying to understand more about the artistic and the philosophical domains. Socrates said that I know that I don't know. And I found that extremely powerful reminder for any exploration of a creative project, for problem solving, or even for design. If we go from the point of view of what we know and try to transcend into what we don't know yet, and then still keep some awareness about how much we don't know. I find that kind of alignment is like a very useful toolkit or an approach for thinking creatively, whether you're thinking about science or whether you're thinking about an art project. That's it, Hugh. I think I want to stop over there, and then maybe we can have a discussion on this, and that could probably lead to different directions. So that's my little story. Thank you.
Can you repeat that one sentence? You said, if I know how much I don't know, right? And there was also a version, if I say I know, I stop continuing thinking. And, is that familiar?
Yeah, so the first one was about what Socrates said, that I know that I don't know, which creates a grounding on how much we think we know and how much we actually know. And then what Einstein said, where the more we know, the more we don't know. Like that's just paraphrasing it. The more we know about reality, it's just like an expanding circle of knowledge, but the periphery beyond which we don't know just keeps expanding infinitely. So, yeah.
Did you personally got to the point where you got frustrated, like discovering that over and over again?
Well, in science, I'll tell you like where it really hit me. It was I'm trained as a biologist. My dissertation is in toxicology, and my research project was in looking at how tissues and organs repair themselves. So I was like, well, how does that happen? Like, you remove a liver from a rat, and in 7 days, 70% that was excised just regrows, regenerates, and that's how all our livers are. And the thinking was that whatever mechanisms play a role in regenerating an organ once it is injured, those mechanisms are also playing a role when our bodies are first formed during embryonic development. So I said, well, maybe that's where the answers lie. So I did a postdoctoral stint at UCSD working in embryonic development, where we went further deeper into it. That's where actually I first hit artificial intelligence, because we started realizing that the complexity of biology is so astronomical that if you want to analyze it, if you want to model it, if you want to find patterns, the hidden language of nature, you're going to need like extremely high compute. But while I was looking at these things under the microscope, looking on the screens and looking at patterns of data, I started becoming eerily aware that that's how I came into existence, that's how we all come into existence, and you start really seriously taking the questions about, like, you know, is this all computational? Is this all simulation? Is it all, how much can we actually know? And so that became such a huge existential crisis that my advisor said, well, you have to decide whether you want to have a serious career in science or philosophy. And I said, fine, I'm going back to India. So I went back to India for 6 years and absolutely forgot about science.
Yeah, that's great. Can I ask one more question? Art. You mentioned art. Art is an expanded media to, tackle maybe things that can't be done in science.
Yeah. So for me, my engagement with art has been mostly through music, and for a long time through digital art medium, and I've been also dabbling with analog, but it's all just experimenting and just indulging my own need for expressing. But what I found in art, which was very hard to approach in science, was that in art you have the freedom to push the boundaries in an abstract direction. In science, you're constrained to hold that abstract domain into something that can be articulated, something that can be put into a model or an equation, and then apply for funding for that, and all that stuff. But I feel that the combination of art and science, and everyone probably knows this, but both these disciplines were actually unified in the past. They were part of philosophy, which literally translates to love for wisdom. And art and science were not as segregated as they are in the modern world. I recently also learned that scientists in the traditional, the lineage of scientists were basically people who used to just get drunk and just love to have discussions about the nature of nature. And that's how science, that whole origin of science is actually just people absolutely very curious about asking questions and probing phenomena and trying to come up with some kind of a model to articulate it. So it seems like there's a lot of overlap.
I love that. Any other questions?
Was that? Yeah, I think they were all hanging out together.
I have something to give you. Mine will maybe start flat. A single knowledge can cross over.
Would you like to explain this? Because this is very intriguing.
Well, because you assuming world is flat. What if it's not?
Oh, it's not absolutely, you're right.
So what if we all intertwine and a single knowledge can cross all of them? That's what
100%, yes.
it's going to be much better life.
Yes. It still leaves the infinity though. I think we're never going to run out of it.
Never.
So I have a quick thought here. Donald Rumsfeld once said, he was talking about information, what people knew and what they didn't know. He said some people know what they know, and they know what they don't know. The problem is that many people don't know what they don't know. So So as I was drawing your concentric circles, this constellation of ideas, I was thinking about that thought. So, what do you have to say about Donald Rumsfeld?
Oh, that is the dangerous territory, right? The things that we don't know. I mean, that's where we really screw up. As when human beings wind up making, like what Emmanuel was talking about, like, why are so many stupid decisions being made? I think that's what happens. We're basically overestimating our knowledge about the things that we don't know, but even worse, the things we don't know that we don't know. And that's always there in the blind spot or beyond the blind spot of the spaceship of planet Earth that we are hurtling through space. And so I think it's important to actually be aware of that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
What's concerning for me is not that, it's that there's so many people who think they know and are the gatekeepers for the rest of us to find out more about what we should know. So there's all this indigenous knowledge that has been lost to us, and it's so beautiful and makes so much sense. There's this anthropologist, Wade Davis. Have people heard of him? Anyways, he tells a story of going down to South America to learn about ayahuasca ceremonies and all the rest, and as a biologist, just being stunned by how the shamans could sort of take a plant and put it with another plant, and it could be very dangerous plants, very toxic, but they knew which ones to do and when to pick them. And so as a biologist, as a scientist, he said, how do you know this? And the shaman looked at him and said, well, the plants talk to me. How else would I know? And, as a Western scientist, he was like, what do you mean the plants talk to you? And the shaman was, of course they talk to me. How can you not hear what they're saying? And that, to me, is, I think, such a limitation of where we're at. We're human-centric, but also we're Western-centric, male-centric, all this stuff. And we kind of put our boundaries are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we go through time, rather than more open.
Oh, thanks for that story. Definitely, that's a very interesting area, ancient pharmacology, and how they extract that knowledge. Especially with ayahuasca, they're talking about like combining two different substances, one that acts in the gut and one that acts in the brain. And it would take a very sophisticated lab to figure out the cross interactions, and they were able to do that just by journeying.
Speak to the plants.
Yeah.
And we quite snobbily we say plants can't talk,
Yeah.
but it's not true.
You also reminded me, like when you talk about human-centric, male-centric, Western-centric biases. I recently came across this post in National Geographic that showed the picture of a human egg and thousands of sperms on the way to fertilize. And the narrative of the fertilization process is that it's a competition between those millions of sperms, and the one that gets in is the winner. But there's a lot happening in the egg that actually selects for which sperm gets in. And the framing of this problem is always being kind of distorted by making Darwinian evolution as like, oh, it's a survival of the best and fittest and all that. But it's actually more nuanced than that. It's a dance between the feminine and the masculine aspects of reality. It is natural selection and selection of individual elements. So I think we are at the point in our scientific discoveries and exploration of reality and knowledge acquisition where some of these paradigms are actually being tested, challenged, and we might, if we think optimistically, perhaps we might be getting into more of this interdisciplinary systems thinking kind of philosophy where we rewrite some of these stories.
What did E.O. Wilson, what's his name? Consilience? E.O. Wilson, he had the word for it, right? Consilience, I think, when you, and it brings me back to what Emmanuel said about academia. He's like, we've got all these silos. E.O. Wilson was a biologist, I can't quite remember, he died not that long ago, but his critique of academia was the silos, and if academics would be able to talk to one another and share ideas, academia would be an exciting place.
100%. It actually brought up something that Emmanuel said earlier about the mouse neurons and collective intelligence. Santa Fe Institute of Complexity Sciences, they do a lot of work in this area where they explore, they flip the problem on top from the traditional way of looking at things. So most of science is trying to be reductionist and trying to find which neuron leads to what kind of behavior. But the critique with that approach is that it's actually backwards. We are actually interested in the behaviors that we don't understand. And that's what we're trying to trace back when we try to do some kind of a map of the neurons or try to map the brain or any of these approaches. But we get so lost in the intricate data mining of finding mechanisms and nodes and connections that the bigger problem seems to get sidelined. And it's just a race towards who will find that next next drug target or whatever, which can be turned into a lot of capital. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. It was a little bit longer than 8 p.m. And I know that we could have easily extended the evening.